This is Breaking News Edition. I'm Benita Levine, live in Tel Aviv. Thank you very much for joining us. So much on the go. Israel is ramping up its attacks on terror targets on two fronts at the same time, conducting simultaneous strikes in Tehran and Beirut on this day. Intense strikes targeting military sites in the Iranian capital, also targeting a crucial meeting where clerics had met to elect the next supreme leader. Today, Israeli troops are intensifying their push into Lebanon, targeting Hezbollah locations after the Iranian-backed terror group entered the fray by launching rockets at Israel's north. In recent hours, Hezbollah launching 3 rockets at Haifa in the north and at central Israel. 2 were intercepted, 1 landing in an open area, no injuries. Iran, meanwhile, continues striking several Gulf nations, including Saudi Arabia, Oman, Bahrain, and Kuwait. In recent hours, loud explosions were heard yet again in Qatar and in the UAE. Authorities putting out a limited fire in the vicinity of the U.S. consulate in Dubai after a drone strike as well. President Donald Trump expressing his surprise at the way the Islamic regime has lashed out at Arab nations. He also clarified earlier that he was not dragged into a war against the Iranian regime. Let's take a listen to more from his comments at the White House next to the German Chancellor. Take a look.
Mr. President, did Israel force your hand to launch these strikes against Iran? Did Netanyahu pull the United States into this war?
No, I might have forced their hand. You see, we were having negotiations with these lunatics, and it was my opinion that they were going to attack first. They were going to attack. If we didn't do it, they were going to attack first. I felt strongly about that. And we have great negotiators, great people, people that do this very successfully and have done it all their lives very successful. And based on the way the negotiation was going, I think they were going to attack first. And I didn't want that to happen. So if anything, I might have forced Israel's hand. But Israel was ready and we were ready.
So for the latest, we start our coverage in Washington. Let's go live to our senior U.S. correspondent, Mike Wagenheim. He joins us from the White House. So we heard there President Donald Trump denying that Israel dragged him and the U.S. into a war with what he just called Iranian lunatics. Of course, that follows those comments by the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. It's very clear, Mike, the U.S. president calls the shots. Bring us up to speed. What is the latest there?
Yeah, possibly kind of a bailout of the comments made by Secretary Rubio yesterday when he inferred that America got thrusted into the war because Israel was going to strike first, and therefore America needed to get involved because of fear of retaliation, because of Israeli actions. It adds fodder for anti-Semites and Israel haters. Trump was asked directly about that today, and you heard his comments and trying to pull back a little bit on what was said yesterday by Secretary of State. But we spoke with a senior administration official a little bit earlier this afternoon. He was talking to reporters trying to lay out exactly what transpired in the days that led up to the American decision to attack Iran. And the basic framework that was laid out by the official was negotiations not only weren't going anywhere, they were going backward, and Iran was essentially being defiant and almost mocking in some ways, saying that America could not solve diplomatically what it couldn't do militarily, that they refused to hand over proposals on time, that they had holes in them the size of Swiss cheese, that they were trying to say we need to go over detail. The official said, listen, we've been talking about this for 20 years. These are details that have been talked about in previous negotiations, going back to the JCPOA. There's nothing you don't know at this point. There's nothing we don't know at this point. There's no details to go back and talk about. It's either you're going to do it or you're not. And the Iranians didn't want to do it. America offered to deliver free fuel in exchange for the uranium to be exported out. Iran said it's an inalienable right of ours to continue to produce uranium and have a nuclear program. There were other discoveries about a research center that had stockpiles of uranium at volumes and at levels of enrichment that didn't make any sense for a research facility. The Iranians wouldn't answer questions about that either. In the end, the officials said, really left us no choice, and felt like we had to move forward with this, seeing as negotiations simply weren't going to advance. So here we are at this point in time. Trump says that by the hour, the ability for the Iranians to level off their missile program, their ballistic missiles, is flattening out, which is a huge key at this point, because that's their main arsenal at this point. It's not the nuclear program. It's not quite ready yet. It's the ballistic missiles, and that's exactly what Prime Minister Netanyahu said the last time he was here at the White House. It's that ballistic missile program they've been building up since last June. So the ability of the Americans and the Israelis together to strike at those launchers, to strike at the production facilities, that could very well be the key to completing this operation successfully. In the meantime, Trump is still sticking with his 4-week or so timeline, but we know when we get into Middle East conflicts, that timeline can be thrown right out the window.
Certainly very difficult to predict how long this is all going to take. Mike, the U.S. State Department has ordered non-emergency personnel to leave 6 countries, including Israel, after urging Americans to leave the region immediately. It's a dramatic call and not that easy for people to leave. Tell us more.
Not that easy for people to leave because the American side waited so long to employ these evacuation measures here. And now with air traffic shut down throughout the region and in just about every place at this point, you've got to now run an evacuation program that doesn't rely on commercial airlines or commercial transportation. That's sort of what we saw in the aftermath of October 7th when the United States sent in private planes and charter planes. This appears to be what they're gearing up for here, but now we're several days deep into this war. A lot of other countries have already made their decisions. The State Department says that several hundred Israelis, or Americans rather, have been evacuated out of Israel. There's about another 130 now that could be in the next day or so retrieved out of there by the Americans. But again, we're a few days now into this conflict, and it seems like the State Department was maybe a little bit behind in getting their plans together here. But as of a couple of hours ago, they say they're now putting together that evacuation plan and putting it into motion.
And talking about people wanting to leave the region, Mike, a massive fire in Dubai near the U.S. consulate after an Iranian drone attack. And this keeps on happening. More and more headlines as we speak about developments across the Gulf. While we're talking, we're actually looking at images right now from Dubai. It certainly looks very frightening, and so many of these drone attacks and missile attacks at various Arab nations. Even Donald Trump says that's one of the most surprising developments, the reaction from the regime to that joint operation on Saturday by the U.S. and Israel. And of course, that operation continues as we speak. Tell us more.
Well, keep in mind, the Iranian game plan was to fire off these missiles and drones in order to pressure, with all the damage done, with all the backlash that may have arrived. This was supposed to be a pressure point on the Trump administration. The whole plan was to inflict this damage that the Gulf countries would say, enough. We're not involved in this. We shouldn't have to take this. They would turn to Washington and say, let's find an off-ramp here so we don't continue to incur more damage. It's actually backfired on the Iranians because we see the Saudis, the Emiratis, the Bahrainis, the Kuwaitis, on and on, all pointing the finger back at Iran. Now, President Trump has taken some flack for his relationship with these Arab Gulf leaders. There's been a lot of talk about corruption. There's been a lot of talk about playing up to authoritarian dictators, so on and so forth. Those can be seen as legitimate criticisms. In this particular moment, those relationships have come in darn handy. And the fact that President Trump is getting support from those Arab allies rather than backlash right now could very well, again, be another key point in winning this conflict in the end.
So many changing dynamics as we speak. Live from Washington, as always, thank you so much to our senior U.S. correspondent, Mike Wagenheim, at the White House. More to come from Mike in the coming hours. And now for more, it's a pleasure to welcome to studio our esteemed panel. Security analyst Yaakov Lapin, host of the podcast, The Lapin Assessment, senior Middle East correspondent Ariel Oseran, and our senior correspondent, Owen Alterman. And there are so many developments unfolding across the region at the same time. I want to start with you, Owen. Rafael Grossi, the IAEA director, coming out with some new comments just a short while ago. Quite startling. Tell us more.
That's right. He had been quoted earlier on in the day, Benita, saying that Iran had not attempted to build a nuclear weapon. That, by the way, is not news. No one has ever argued that Iran has actively built a nuclear weapon, just that Iran has basically parked the car a yard from the finish line. At any rate, Rafael Grossi goes and clarifies the remarks, said, yes, I said that, but Iran has huge stockpiles of near bomb-grade uranium. It has not cooperated with the agency and allowed our inspectors in. And until Iran comes clean with its safeguards provisions, essentially basically saying, until Iran tells us what's going on with its program, I, Rafael Grossi, the head of the IAEA, cannot tell you that the program is entirely peaceful. Benita, Grossi has long been viewed as one of the more hawkish, if not the most hawkish, IAEA heads on Iran in decades. And so it's not surprising that he wants to come out and clear this up. There's been obviously a tense relationship, on again, off again relationship between the agency and Iran. On the one hand, he wants to work with the Iranians and get his inspectors in. On the other hand, he certainly wants to stand his ground and not be taken for a sucker. And that's what we see here. Again, this is someone who, with all of the skepticism in this country toward international organizations, has by and large been viewed relatively well. And this tweet, I think, will keep him in that good standing.
Certainly we'll be watching to see the reaction to exactly that. Yaakov Lapin, so many questions about the extent of the success of the Israeli operation inside Tehran. The Air Force saying it struck dozens of launch sites and dismantled approximately 300 missile launches. Give us a sense of the extent and the impact of these latest numbers. It certainly sounds staggering.
It's a huge result. We're talking about the majority of Iran's missile launchers. If we heard that 200 was 50%, now we're at 300. And this appears to be more than the number of missile launchers that was struck throughout the whole of last June's 12-day war. In fact, the IDF is talking about 4,000 munitions that have been used so far and hundreds of strike sorties. All of these numbers mean that the rate of attack and the number of targets destroyed is significantly higher, not just the launchers, across the board. In 4 days, what the Israeli Air Force has achieved is significantly higher than what it achieved in the 12-day war of last June. I think that these numbers speak for themselves. 300 launchers, 4,000 munitions, hundreds of strike sorties, definitely surpassing it. And this is obviously due to lessons learned from the 12-day war. It looks to me like the Israeli Air Force, as soon as that war was over, went back to the drawing board and said, how can we optimize further? We have the target database that's growing between these conflicts, and then they figured out how to use the same jets, the same formations, but to maximize the strike rate. I don't think any Air Force in the world has numbers like these.
Certainly is enormously impressive, and one wonders what that means for the Iranian regime's ability to keep on targeting not only Israel, but as we've been discussing, many parts across the Middle East. Now, that's not the only front we are covering over and above developments inside Iran. We're also looking at developments inside Lebanon. And we're hearing just moments ago, Danny Danon, the Israeli ambassador to the UN, has said that Lebanese government officials need to put pressure on Hezbollah. And we need to find out exactly what that means, specifically with developments on the ground. So we go right now to our correspondent, Balich Sladin. He joins us from northern Israel. So Balich, Hezbollah launching 3 rockets at Israel earlier in the evening, at Haifa in the north and at central Israel. We heard the sirens, of course, here in Tel Aviv. 2 intercepted, 1 falling in an open area. Give us a sense of what is happening across that front and, of course, the latest appeal from Danny Danon the Israeli ambassador to the UN. Break it down for us.
Yes, and the target is obvious, I guess. It's Glilot. Once again, Hezbollah has announced that they are targeting what they are calling the intelligence headquarters of Israel in the area of Glilot, north of Tel Aviv. They failed. Of course, they have tried to attack the same compound several times before during, of course, the war between Israel and Hezbollah, and they failed. And this time as well, according to the IDF, the missiles did fall in open areas and did not cause any damage or harm. Now, this is not the only way that Hezbollah is trying to target Israeli communities and assets in general. We're talking also about drone attacks. In the last couple of hours, they have tried also one more time to attack the Israeli northern communities, and the sirens went off in Arab al-Aramsha, which is right at the border. That's in the Western Galilee, and of course, the Upper Galilee did receive a couple of drones as well. One of them did manage to cause damage to one of the houses there, but no one was hurt as a result of this. By the way, MADA, the Israeli health authorities, did say that one person, as a result of the sirens, apparently on his way to the shelter in Holon, south of Tel Aviv, was harmed and was taken to the hospital, but nothing more than this. Now, the Israeli objective in Lebanon is starting to become more and more clear. We've heard the chief of staff today, Eyal Zamir, talking about the escalation in the north. He said that Hezbollah made a mistake by attacking Israel, and Israel now will actually continue attacking Hezbollah until they disarm. This is the current objective in Israel, to continue the operation until Hezbollah agrees to disarm. Of course, Israel does that. So according to what we are getting from Lebanon, many areas have been targeted. Tyre, which is one of the big cities in the south, apparently a compound that belongs to Jama'a al-Islamiyya, which is a Sunni actually faction, but it fights alongside Hezbollah against Israel. It fought against Israel also during the war in 2024, and their compound was targeted according to what they are saying. So this is in addition, of course, to the ground operation that is widening, although that we're still not sure how, what is the objective there and how much the IDF will advance actually on the ground. Currently, Hezbollah is saying that they are confronting the IDF, but again, the scale of this ground operation is still not clear.
To that exact point, Balech, Defense Minister Yisrael Katz confirming the expansion of the IDF positions in Lebanon to protect border towns, and the IDF moving in to take control of new strategic positions. How is that likely to be received across that front? Your thoughts?
Well, first of all, Israel is doing the right thing by not evacuating the people in the north. I remember I was in the north in the first few days after October 7th, and the evacuation was given to the people there. Tens of thousands of people were evacuated overnight, and that by itself apparently was a mistake. That's what Israeli officials are also admitting. And they are not doing this mistake one more time. They are saying that we will expand the buffer zone. So this ground operation is to actually create a buffer zone between the Hezbollah operatives and the Israeli communities. But whether this will be enough to stop the attacks, all of the attacks, after all, Hezbollah can actually use their missiles and rockets that are even north of the Litani River and attack Israeli communities in the north and even far beyond that. So the ground operation has its own objective, but it will not stop all of the attacks. And of course, we can't forget the drones challenge to the Israeli air defense systems, although that the new laser beam or Magen Or has been installed in the northern area and many other areas in Israel. But apparently the drones are still a threat to Israel. We have seen that today, and apparently that will accompany us also in the coming days.
We certainly did see that today. Yisrael Katz saying the security promised to the northern communities will be guaranteed, but that's proving quite a task indeed. Correspondent Balech Sladin in northern Israel, appreciate the update. More to come from Balech in the coming hour. And now we were talking earlier on about the Iranian regime targeting different parts of the Middle East, and Ariel Oseran, our senior Middle East correspondent, Iraqi Kurdistan, the latest site that is being targeted, and specifically a site where American troops are based. What are you learning? It's just a report at the stage. What are your sources telling you?
Yeah, so if we can put on the screen right now, we have exclusive footage that was sent to I-24 News of fire at the old UN site in Sulaymaniyah, that's in Iraqi Kurdistan, after it was hit by a drone. Now, coinciding with that, we have reports of explosions in the Baghdad International Airport in Iraq, sirens in Bahrain. So we see here that Iran and its proxies are constantly engaged in trying to target sites that they claim have an affiliation to U.S. forces. Also, the U.S. consulate in Dubai was struck by a drone. Authorities there say that the fire is under control right now and that there were no injuries. But really, we see that not only Israel is in one of the main destinations of Iran's firepower, but really they're lashing out at the entire region. And in fact, here what we're seeing right now, that is from Sulaymaniyah in northeastern Iraq. That's the Kurdistan region over there near the border with Iran. And so, as I was saying, Iran here is sending a clear message to all its regional neighbors. I'm not sure the message that it wants to send is what is being received, because from my conversations that I've been having with people in the Gulf, they say that they want to see their countries get involved with, countering Iran, to target Iran. For example, one source in the Gulf telling me, quote, "There is no free lunch when Israel is the host," meaning they understand that when Israel goes after Iran, they may be affected too, but they want to see the fall of the Islamic regime. Now, to that point, what I'm understanding in the Gulf, specifically in Saudi Arabia, for example, they want to join the fight, but they cannot do so, or they feel like they cannot do so as long as Israel is engaged in this war against Iran, because they do not want to appear as if they are fighting alongside Iran. So from what I'm understanding, there have been messages relayed to US President Trump saying that if Israel steps aside and stops its involvement in the war, they will then get involved and retaliate against Iran. Now, that raises many question marks as to how important it is for them to maintain their own national security, because if they are struck and they are refraining from retaliating simply for optics purposes, that doesn't really serve their own national security interests, but ultimately that is up for them to decide.
The UAE says it's faced over 1,000 Iranian attacks since this all started. It's only day 4. How is it able to withstand this kind of onslaught from the Islamic regime right now?
Yeah, look, yesterday there was very interesting reporting in Bloomberg saying that the interceptors of both the UAE and Qatar are rapidly depleting, that in the current pace, the UAE has only weeks long of interceptors in their stockpile, and for Qatar, they only have 4 more days. Now, that report was yesterday, so you can knock off a day from that timeline. Both countries have denied this situation, and in fact, when I contacted sources in these countries, they have said that they have not yet reached out to their allies to replenish their stockpiles, but indeed, at this pace, it is impossible to see how they will not be put in a situation where they will need to replenish these stockpiles. And that is part of the Iranian strategy that was discussed here earlier, that Iran views their pressure that they're putting on Gulf countries as something that could force those countries to then request from the U.S. to seek a ceasefire so that they can, that they won't be put in a situation where they are attacked by Iran and they cannot defend themselves, let alone not retaliate, as I mentioned earlier. But ultimately, they're in a very precarious situation, and specifically with Dubai, I think 3 times more drones have been sent to Dubai and Abu Dhabi than have been sent by Iran. to Israel. And the UAE is one of Iran's biggest trade partners, $30 billion in trade last year. So it's not quite clear what Iran is trying to achieve here, or if they will indeed achieve what they are seeking. But ultimately, the pressure is very high on the Gulf.
30 seconds to the break.
I think that what Iran is trying to achieve is actually two things. One, they're trying to create a Gulf anti-war lobby. By terrorizing the Gulf, they're trying to create pressure on Washington to end the war, and they're trying to do this by terrorizing their neighbors. And I also think that they're trying to take revenge for any Gulf country, any of their neighbors that cooperates, that they suspect of cooperating with the United States or with Israel or with both. They're trying to tell them, if you continue to do this, we're going to see you as enemies. There is no more in between. You're either neutral or you are going to be seen as an enemy and treated accordingly. So I think this is actually calculated.
It's certainly leaving them looking incredibly isolated right now. Gentlemen, stay with us. We're going to take a very short break. When we get back, our coverage continues on this breaking news edition. Don't go anywhere. This is I-24 News.
Do you suffer in pain? Are you stiff, tense, or less active than before? Introducing the EasyWell Remedy Massage System that combines the incredible effects of vibrational therapy, targeted deep tissue shiatsu massage, plus soothing infrared heat. A triple fusion of therapeutic experiences. Full body vibrational therapy increases blood circulation and reduces inflammation. Look at these beads moving from the powerful vibrational motors.
It's like 1,000 little fingers just vibrating my body from head to toe.
Infrared heat penetrates deep to reduce pain, soothe, and relax.
Remedy gets in there and helps deal with the source of the pain, so you feel much better.
The Ultra Shiatsu pillow with 6 infrared heated nodes mimics a professional massage. Plus, it's detachable for deep relief anywhere you need it.
It's just something that you're gonna have to feel for yourself.
Experience the true remedy for your pain and stiffness. Call now.
Are high interest rates keeping you from selling your home? We have a way to get you more money for your home while saving thousands in commissions. At Ideal Agent, we'll connect you with a top local agent who will sell your home fast, for top dollar, and all this for as low as a 2% commission.
We paid a 2% commission, which I don't think we would have had with any other agent, and we got top dollar for our house, and we are just so happy about it, and the results were fantastic.
Ideal Agent connected me with the top 1% agent in my market, and I actually got it at a discount, and I saved about $12,500, which is unheard of when you're working with the top producer in any industry.
We've helped tens of thousands of home sellers get 5-star results with top-performing experts you can trust. We guarantee it. Ideal Agent is available nationwide, there's no obligation, and best of all, our service is completely free. Call today or visit idealagent.com.
Secret is out. With millions of younger-looking customers across the country, Plexiderm is one of the most sought-after anti-aging products available today. Influencers love it, magazines feature it, and people just can't get enough of it. As a matter of fact, Elle Magazine gave it an Editor's Choice Award as Best Instant Wrinkle Filler for 2025. Plexiderm reduces the appearance of fine lines, wrinkles, and those dreaded under-eye bags in as little as 10 minutes. So yes, you can look years younger in minutes, and the effects will last for hours. No surgery, no gimmicks, just results.
Look at this one under eye bag. It's gone.
I've tried it all, and then I found Plexiderm, and this happened.
The best news, in this super inflated economy, you can try Plexiderm for only $14.95 and free shipping. So don't wait. Just call the number on your screen.
Call 800-919-8734.
You live in Israel or you are preparing for your Aliyah? Congratulations. You have a smartphone? Perfect. Download the Olim app for free and discover everything we have to offer. Booking medical and administrative appointments, bills paying, debt verification, instant translation, contractor recommendation, request tracking, and much more. And if you can't manage it on your own, our team speaks your language and assists you with all your procedures in Israel, starting from 199 shekels per month, unlimited and for the whole family. Don't hesitate any longer. Download the app or contact us.
Welcome back to this breaking news edition. Our coverage continues. Israel is ramping up its attacks on terror targets on two fronts at the same time, conducting simultaneous strikes in Tehran and Beirut on this day. Intense strikes targeting military sites in the Iranian capital, also targeting a crucial meeting where clerics had met to elect the next supreme leader. Iran, meanwhile, continues striking several Gulf nations, including Saudi Arabia, Oman, Bahrain, and Kuwait. In recent hours, loud explosions were heard yet again in Qatar and the UAE, and authorities have put out a limited fire in the vicinity of the U.S. consulate in Dubai after an Iranian drone strike. President Donald Trump expressing his surprise at the way the Islamic regime has lashed out at Arab countries. He also clarified earlier that he was not dragged into a war against the Iranian regime. And now for more reaction. It's a pleasure to welcome Ghazel Sharmad, spokesperson of the Kingdom Assembly of Iran and daughter of activist Shamshid Sharmad, who was murdered by the Islamic Republic, joining us now from Los Angeles. Thank you so much for your time. I cannot imagine the feelings you must be having on learning what has transpired in the last few days, to start when you heard that the supreme leader and 40 of the Iranian commanders had been eliminated at the start of this joint operation on Saturday. How did you respond? How did you feel?
It is still surreal. It is still unbelievable to know that from now on, the murderers, the torturers, the people who kidnapped my father, tortured him for 4.5 years, murdered him, and then desecrated his body, who are raping our children, who are putting bullets into the eyes of our women, who are like doing so much harm for so long, they are no more on this earth to do this harm. But at the same time, besides all of the joy that you've seen from Iran, from all of the corners of Iran to all of the corners of the world of relief, we also understand that this Islamic regime is not just defined by their leadership. They are already in the process of trying to replace leadership after leadership after leadership. The whole structure of the Islamic regime is based on their repressive forces, and that is the IRGC and the paramilitary Basij forces. So it was very relieving to see that the next strikes went first to the headquarters of the IRGC and the Basij, and hopefully they will target the mass bulk of these jihadist repressive apparatuses of the Islamic regime, who are killing Iranians in the thousands and need to be stopped.
What is your sense then of the end game, for want of a better term, for this war? There has been some level of criticism that there are plans in place for the military developments as we speak, and many achievements are happening as we speak. But what are your hopes for the future of the Iranian people? What does it look like?
It's not just hopes, it's already in the doing. The game plan of the Iranian people has been liberation. You have to understand, in 1979, this was an Islamic coup by Arab Islamist forces, which are foreign to Iranian. They're anti-Iranian. The Ayatollahs are as foreign to Iran as they are to Israel, as they are to America. They came to destroy Iran, and they have been killing all of the Iranians for all of this time. So from the moment they came to power, the Iranian people tried to liberate themselves. Year after year, revolution after revolution, uprising after uprising, they were left alone by the world to go against military power, to go against machine guns, to go against a lynching system that has killed them, tortured them, raped them for so long. So for the very first time, the Iranian people are not alone. They have allies in Israel, in America, and around the world that understand this regime is just like the Hitler regime, just like the Nazis, a genocidal, expansionist force that is at war with civilization inside of Iran and outside of the country. So this regime can be no more. This will end in the will of the Iranian people with a liberation. We're not quite there yet, but we're putting the blocks and the path in the way of having a free Iran.
So much has been made over the speculation around Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi. What is your sense there? What role he might have down the line?
The Crown Prince of Iran has last year in 2025, in June or July 2025, created the first coalition of Iranian opposition forces outside of the country. This is the biggest and most diverse coalition of Iranian opposition, going from the left to the right to the middle, having every ethnicity, every faith, every socioeconomic class, every kind of political ideology combined in one coalition. The people of Iran are responding exactly to that coalition, and they're calling on the Crown Prince, not for the future leadership, which will be determined by the Iranian people later on when they're liberated. They're calling all together on the Crown Prince to lead the transition. So with this transitional force is what America and Israel and all of our allies outside can work. Because right now, when we're weakening the apparatus of the Islamic regime and asking the IRGC to lay down your weapons, who are they supposed to surrender to? If there is no force on the ground, who are they supposed to surrender? So the Crown Prince, in his capacity as a transitional leader, has already worked with the people inside of the country. That's why you saw in January the uprisings calling for his name. He has shown that he has people in the army deflecting from the IRGC. These are the people that need to see the leadership in place, a sovereign leadership in place, to then take command from this leadership. So it's imperative at this point that we're not just focusing on taking down this regime, but also on the structural plan of the transition, which has a 100-day plan of how to smoothly transfer sovereignty from the occupiers of Iran to the people of Iran.
Times are certainly changing. Talking to you, it feels tangible. We thank you so much, Ghazel Sharmad. We're watching to see how it all unfolds. Thank you so much for being with us live from Los Angeles. Thank you. Incredible courage. What a beautiful, beautiful message being sent right now about the future, particularly for women in Iran. Here's hoping. Let's see how it all unfolds. Senior Middle East correspondent Ariel Osseran, let's bring another update to the developments in Iran and with the Supreme Leader and burial plans in Mashhad. What are you learning? What can you tell us?
Yeah, so the Assembly of Experts whose building in Qom was struck earlier today, and IDF spokesperson Effie Dufresne this evening could not confirm that indeed they were convening to select the next Supreme Leader. According to the IRGC's Fars News, the final decision of the electing a Supreme Leader will be postponed until after the funeral of Ali Khamenei, who will be buried next week in his hometown of Mashhad. That's Iran's second largest city in the northeastern tip. It'll be very interesting to see this ceremony procession, in fact, take place with U.S. and Israeli air superiority all across the country, to see which Iranian senior officials will be there. When you bury the Supreme Leader, everyone has to show up, from Ali Larijani, the top Security Council official, to Masoud Pezeshkian, the president, even the Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. We could expect to see them alongside top leadership from the IRGC. So very interesting that this is already has a date set for next week, when this war is still ongoing and it is expected to continue for next week. But ultimately, the funeral will be next week, and the decision for Khamenei's replacement is likely to be postponed until after that ceremony.
It will also be interesting to see how many of the plus 80 clerics who were said to have been in this assembly meeting that was targeted will be at the funeral, if any, the latest.
Right. Going off of what Ariel was saying, and actually going back to what our guest said, we have to remember that this regime has, according to Iran experts in Israel, about 15% support of the population. It's obviously a minority, but it's an important minority to keep in mind. Almost no matter which future Iran heads toward, if we head toward some kind of transition after the regime, Benita, those 15% are still going to be there. They're going to play a role in the society. They're going to have a vote, so to speak, about the future of Iran. Two very different situations. But if you look at post-communist Eastern Europe, for example, or even the post-communist former Soviet Union, those who were part of the party and who were part of the elites played a role in what came afterwards. And again, these are two very different transitions. Iran is highly unlikely, given that we're in this kind of conflict, this kind of war, to go through the kinds of transitions we saw there. But still, the elite and even the foot soldiers of this revolution, so to speak, and of the Islamic Republic are going to be there on the other side. And even if the majority is not with them, they will be there as well. And they'll have to be taken accounted for in one way or another.
We certainly will be watching. No doubt the whole region will be watching to see what happens because of exactly that. So many questions. Who is in charge? Who is calling the shots? Gentlemen, stay with us. We've got so much more to unpack. But right now, I want to go back to our correspondent, Joe Brown. He joins us once again from Tel Aviv. And shrapnel falling several times during the day. What is the latest you can tell us about what is unfolding inside Tel Aviv?
Well, I think it's easy to talk about what's not unfolding inside Tel Aviv, because right now, had this been planned a week ago, there would be thousands of people around me, people who had come here from all over the world to drink, dance, have fun, and wear racially insensitive costumes, because today is Purim, and people in a situation that wouldn't have ended up with the war that we have right now, people would have been out in the streets celebrating for days on end. But today, because of the IDF's Homefront command that states that people should not be gathering outside of a bomb shelter, this has not been the case. Last night, though, there were a handful of parties underground in the shelters following a reading of the Megillah, the story of Purim. And there is a very clear similarity between the story of Purim and what is happening right now. The story of Purim, for those who aren't aware, there was a king in Persia, and his right-hand man, Haman, organized a plot to wipe out the Jewish population of Persia. However, the Jews fought back with Mordechai and Queen Esther, and that ended up not happening. Haman was overthrown, and the Jewish people lived on. It gets told about year upon year. The Jewish people celebrate it every year. And I believe that was the sound of a missile, so...
Joe,
yep.
You need to get to
I am
safety.
going to go
Thank
find
you very
a
much.
safe room as soon as possible.
Thank you very much, Joe Brown. And he is absolutely right. Red alert siren sounding, incoming missiles of sorts. Our panel is going to go to the shelter right now. We will hand over once again to our team in Washington, and we'll return as soon as it is safe to do so. Stay tuned. Back in a bit.
Mike Wagenheim here at the White House in Washington as our crew in Tel Aviv heads to the shelter. Red alerts in Israel. If you're hearing sirens right now, if you're getting alerts on your phone, please get to the nearest shelter. Don't wait a second. Get there as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, we'll keep you updated on what's happening here in Washington. President Trump earlier today speaking with the press as he sat alongside German Chancellor Friedrich Merz for a meeting. Trump clarifying some comments that Secretary of State Marco Rubio made yesterday, inferring that the imminent Israeli action against Iran essentially forced the United States to get into the war itself due to American fears that Iran would retaliate not only against Israel, but against the United States as well. Trump was asked directly about that, and he said, no, based on the way the negotiating was going, I think Iran was going to attack first, and I didn't want that to happen. So if anything, I might have forced Israel's hand. We're going to pause here for just a moment to get you updated on the red alerts that we're now seeing up on our screen here from the Israeli Home Front Command System. Alerts all along the Mediterranean coast, stretching almost as far as Jerusalem to the east. It's as far north as a little bit north of Netanya, between Netanya and Hadera, and all the way down to Ashkelon in the south. They range across the eastern portion of the country and out across to Bethlehem. We're seeing some alerts near Hebron, up north as well to Jerusalem, and some up near Shem, up near Nablus as well. So just a bevy of alerts going on throughout the country right now. Again, if you're hearing them or if you're seeing red alerts on your phone, please get to the shelter as quickly as possible. So back here at the White House today, Donald Trump saying something had to be done about Iran. He said it's been 47 years. They've been killing people all over the world for a long time. They were really a purveyor of terror all over the world for many, many years, end quote. He also said, I thought we were going to have a situation where we were going to be attacked. A lot of those missiles that are hitting, those are stationary. Those were aimed there for a long period of time at these other countries. So I think I was right about that. Those were quotes from Donald Trump from earlier on today. He's still up. We're getting word from the studio here. Apparently there have not been sirens, but red alerts. I hope I have that clearly. It's a little tough to communicate with our crew down in the shelter, but I'm getting an alert that there were not any sirens yet. Seeing pictures of red alerts throughout the country. So hopefully we can get some clarity on that. So Trump continued to speak with the media, outlining still what he believes will be a 4 to 5 week process, though he said we're ahead of schedule. He reiterated that he's unsure what exactly a post-regime Iran would look like if it came to that. And some of the partners, if you want to call them, that may have been there in a post-Ayatollah government may have been killed in strikes over the last few days. So still trying to sort out who's actually alive and whether they'd make for potential partners down the road here, but too early at this point to really sort all that out. Meanwhile, the senior administration official talking to reporters about an hour and a half ago and telling reporters, kind of outlining what the situation looked like in the days ahead of the decision to go to war from the American side. The senior administration official, and by the way, now sirens are going off from what we understand. The senior administration official telling reporters that negotiations with the Iranians essentially went nowhere, that the Iranians were defiant, almost mocking in a sense their ability to build a nuclear arsenal within a short amount of time, saying that the United States would not be able to accomplish diplomatically what it could not do militarily. There were hopes that they would come back with a viable plan. Instead, there was delay, according to the senior administration official, which is right in the Iranian MO. Even plans that were supposed to come back within a matter of a few days were left unfinished. And what was actually turned over to the Americans at certain points in time just simply did not align with what the Americans thought the reality of a deal would look like. There just weren't enough concessions on issues like enrichment. The senior administration official confirmed that the American side offered to deliver free fuel to the Iranians to keep alive a peaceful nuclear program while exporting all of their enriched uranium to a safe location. They refused to do so. They said enrichment is an inalienable right, a sovereign right for them, and refused to discuss that. They would not go into talks at all on their ballistic missile program, refused to talk at all about their support for terror proxies, and in the end, just not enough concessions, and essentially it wasn't going anywhere, according to the administration official, nowhere fast. So the decision was made that that was it, and Donald Trump, in the end, saying if they're not willing to come to the table, there's no sense in continuing these discussions. So the decision was made at that point to go to war. Getting a look here from Washington at the latest red alerts in Israel right now, all spanning west to east, all the way through the country, all the way from the coast past Jerusalem and almost to the Jordanian border here. As far north now as it's a little bit south of Netanya along the coast. Wow, just blanketing the central portion of the country, all the way through Gush Dan and to almost to the Jordanian border. Again, if you're hearing those sirens or if you're seeing these alerts on your phone, please get to a shelter as quickly as possible. Those red alerts all the way through Gush Dan, through Yarkon, the Sharon area, Samaria, all the way through. Please be careful out there. Marco Rubio, Secretary of State / National Security Advisor, speaking with reporters a short time ago from Capitol Hill, where he is briefing the full House and the full Senate behind closed doors today. Now we're seeing at least one missile, I understand, over central Israel. We'll try to keep you posted on that situation as much as we can as we're relaying the news here. Going back and forth here, I apologize, as we're trying to keep up with what's happening in Israel and also relay the news here to the U.S. So Rubio telling reporters, quote, "Our objectives remain as they've been identified from the beginning. Iran can never have a nuclear weapon, and we will not allow Iran to hide behind the immunity of a massive short-term ballistic missile inventory. We have every confidence in the world that these objectives will be achieved." Rubio also clarified a bit, as we're now hearing loud explosions in central Israel, that his comment yesterday in terms of Israel possibly forcing America's hand to get into the war, he attempted to clarify that as well. He said, somebody asked me a question yesterday, did we go in because of Israel? And I said, no. I'm stopping the quote there because that's not really what he said. But back to the quote, said, I told you this had to happen anyway. I told you this had to happen anyway. Trump made a decision, and the decision he made was that Iran was not going to be allowed to hide behind its ballistic missile program, end quote. Meanwhile, the State Department, perhaps a bit belatedly, now launching an evacuation effort for Americans stranded in the Middle East. They've identified charter flights and military flight options, some expanded commercial flight options, and are now trying to organize a massive evacuation of Americans that have been left stranded in the Middle East. Marco Rubio imploring Americans in that situation right now. He said, we need to know where you are. We need to have contact information for Americans that need assistance. And he's urging everybody to register with the information that's been provided in a number of different forums, just in case you're one of those in that situation right now. You're encouraged to go to step.state.gov. That's step.state.gov. You'll get the latest information from your embassy there. He also encouraged folks to follow the State Department on social media. If you need emergency assistance and you're overseas right now, the number to dial is +1 202 501 4444. That's +1 202 501 4444. If you're overseas in the Middle East right now and you need immediate assistance from the State Department to get out, I can't vouch personally for the efficiency of the system right now, as it seems like they're just trying to get it up and running, but they're urging people to at least enroll so they can keep track and hopefully can reach people as those options become available. Again, this is Mike Wagenheim coming to you from the White House in Washington. Our crew in Tel Aviv is in the shelter with red alerts going up throughout the country right now, sirens over central Israel with incoming rocket fire. A huge explosion was heard in Bat Yam, according to one of our staffers as well. And we continue to keep our eyes on the home front here as we get you updated about what's happening here in Washington. Coming up tomorrow, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dan Kane, are going to brief the media once again. That'll be tomorrow morning Eastern time from the Pentagon. They were among the first administration officials to really give in some stark fashion details about the operation so far, and they'll be back at the podium coming up tomorrow. Getting an update here again on these sirens that are happening now in the Modi'in area as well, west of Jerusalem. So again, just in a massive amount of red alerts and sirens going off right now. Trying to keep you posted as best we can as our crew. We're still down in the shelter. There was at least one missile that was seen over central Israel, but for now, this very moment, no reports of impacts yet in Israel, and we pray that that situation will continue. So as I was speaking about, the State Department launching a massive evacuation effort to get the citizens that are stuck in the Middle East out of there as quickly as possible. In terms of Israel itself, the State Department officials saying earlier today, hundreds of American citizens have left Israel since the start of the conflict. And over the last few days, the State Department has assisted over 130 American citizens to depart Israel, with an additional 100 expected to depart today. The officials said the State Department is in direct contact and aiding nearly 500 American citizens to arrange travel out of Israel currently. Back on the home front, the IDF issuing evacuation warnings ahead of airstrikes on Hezbollah sites in Kfar Juz, in Haruf, and in the Kfar villages in southern Lebanon. The IDF been dealing now with Hezbollah, which entered the fray yesterday after sitting on the sidelines for the first few days of the war. Lebanese government outlawing at this point any Hezbollah activities. That's a few decades overdue, but finally pulling the trigger on that decree. Of course, Hezbollah not exactly playing along, and the IDF expending time and energy and resources trying to stop that fire coming from a depleted but still viable Hezbollah there in southern Lebanon. No reports around the Middle East as of yet of any backlash toward the Americans for what's happening right now. Again, every press release we see, every statement we see, every tweet from the Bahrainis, from the Kuwaitis, from the Emiratis, from the Saudis, on and on, pointing the finger at Iran, which is quite an accomplishment for U.S. President Donald Trump. He's often criticized for his close relationships with those rulers in the Gulf states, always accusations of corruption, of playing up to dictators. And of course, those arguments can be made in good faith, but at this moment, those relationships are coming in quite handy for U.S. President Donald Trump and the American side, as they have kept those Gulf countries from essentially falling into the trap that Iran was trying to lay in attacking those countries. The mission was to agitate those leaders, to get them to turn against President Trump, or at least try to get him to pick an off-ramp. Hasn't happened yet. In fact, it's backfired on the Iranians in more ways than one. And yet the Iranians, again, just keep attacking those Gulf countries. Mike Wagon, I'm coming to you here from the White House in Washington. Red alerts and sirens throughout Israel right now, spanning from, pardon my expression, from the river to the sea, as we'll keep an eye on any kind of impacts that are going on there, and hopefully can pass along the news to you once more. If you are in Israel right now, you hear those sirens or you see an alert pop up on your phone, don't wait a second. get to a near shelter as quickly as possible. Again, not some of these missiles that are coming in, not leaving a whole lot of room for delay. So please find a shelter as quickly as you possibly can. Our crew right now, our I-24 News crew, is down in the shelter, which is why you're hearing my voice all this time. A report from Channel 12 in Israel says at least one missile has been intercepted and one fell in an open area. But everybody that has fallen under these alerts right now still not allowed to leave the shelter. Everybody's still maintaining their posture down in the shelter right now. So some news from around the region. The UAE saying it has been exposed to over 1,000 attacks so far from Iran. The Emiratis are not giving in at this point. An Emirati Foreign Ministry statement coming out a short time ago saying the UAE has been subject to over 1,000 attacks since Iran launched strikes throughout the region. The ministry says it has not taken any decision to change its defensive stance toward Iran's attacks, but it reserves the right to defend itself. That has been the general posture of most of the Gulf states that have been affected so far. We're not yet ready to retaliate. We're not in a position to do so, but we reserve the right to do so. There have been reports of some countries coming close now to pulling the trigger on more offensive measures against the Iranians, if you can call it that at this point. Retaliatory measures, I guess, would be a more accurate description for it. But nobody yet has pulled the trigger on that particular decision. It's unclear at this point if it's a threat, a bluff, or if it's just an option being left open. We've heard the Saudis put into that category, the Emiratis as well, but at this point, still maintaining a defensive posture. We understand our I-24 News crew there in Jaffa has gotten the okay to come back to the studio, so they'll be rejoining you in just a short amount of time. Once more, this is Mike Wagon. I'm here in Washington at the White House, where U.S. President Donald Trump addressed the media a few hours ago, again laying out a rationale for why the U.S. went to war, clarifying that it was not Israel that forced America's hand. It was America that maybe forced Israel's hand. Probably music to the ears of some in Jerusalem who fear that Secretary Rubio's comments to the opposite effect yesterday might have a deleterious effect on the U.S.-Israel relationship. We'll see how that all plays out in time. But in the meantime, Rubio and Trump playing a little bit of a cleanup game today with those comments. Coming up tomorrow again, Secretary Hegseth, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Dan Kane, will address the media. There are no further, at least on our radar, no further media statements or press conferences on the horizon for tomorrow. Marco Rubio is on the Hill today, along with Hegseth and Kane, speaking with the full House and the full Senate behind closed doors, as those two houses have been asking for, laying out once again the rationale for going to war with Iran and what it's going to take to wind down operations from here. 6 U.S. service members have already been killed. At least 15 have been injured. Thankfully, no more have been added to the list, at least publicly today. But again, many members of the House and Senate want answers and want them very quickly on what they see as perhaps executive overreach in this particular operation without the consultation of Congress and without the authority to conduct a major military operation. This has been a long time give and take, mostly take by the executive branch when it comes to entering these conflicts in the Middle East. And Congress, at this point, trying to claw back some of that power, at least some of that consent when it comes to these military operations in the Middle East. President Trump still says that the 4 to 5 week timeline that they believe this operation would take is still in place, although things are moving more quickly than he thought they would go. Our crew making its way back now to the studio, and they're going to rejoin you in just a few moments' time here. We've had no updates, any further updates on any impacts, and hopefully it will remain that way with no impacts doing any damage. We're going to send it back now to the crew in Jaffa in the studio.
And thank you so much to our Mike Wagenheim, the incomparable Mike Wagenheim, taking over the broadcast. This is Breaking News Edition. I'm Benita Levine, live in Tel Aviv, and you saw how live our coverage really is. We were talking a little earlier to our correspondent, Joe Brown. He was in Tel Aviv. Our signs went off. The sirens went off on our phones, alerting us to the fact that there was potentially another incoming barrage. And that indicated that we had a certain amount of time to get to the shelter before we found out for a fact that, yes, in fact, it was another Iranian missile barrage, slightly different from when it happened earlier on in our coverage in the day. There was no alert on our phone when Hezbollah fired rockets towards Haifa and the center of Israel. Senior Middle East correspondent Ariel Osaran break down exactly what has unfolded right now, the difference between the Iranian missile barrage coming towards Tel Aviv and other parts of the country just moments ago, and Hezbollah, what happens when rockets are fired out of southern Lebanon.
Yeah, due to the vast distance between Israel and Iran, Israeli Home Front, the IDF Home Front Command provides an early warning to the citizens that is the alert that went off on our phone, that it identified launch of ballistic missiles towards Israel. The expected impact area is our area, Central Israel. So we in Central Israel received this alert. And then 5-6 minutes later, once indeed the missiles reached the area, then the sirens went off, and then everyone has 90 seconds to reach a secure site. Now that is, the best early warning you can ask for when you're targeted by ballistic missiles. But with regards to what is launched from Lebanon, the distance is so much shorter that Israel simply doesn't have the luxury or the ability to provide that early warning to the citizens. And also the fact that we're talking about rockets, it can really differ in terms of where it will fall. So it is less easy to project, in fact, where the expected impact site will be. And that is why when there were rockets from Lebanon, there wasn't an early warning, simply the 90-second siren. And so when the missiles come from a farther distance, Israelis have more time to prepare themselves. And that is what we saw in this case a short while ago. As far as the results of this barrage, we're talking about a handful of ballistic missiles, no injuries reported according to Israel's emergency services. No official confirmation yet that all of the missiles were intercepted, but that is indeed the expectation of the results of this latest barrage. And so that is the current situation. Right now, Israelis also received on their phone just 2 minutes ago an alert that they can leave the safe zones, and we did that. And now we're here broadcasting again.
And so our coverage continues. And of course, if there are any updates in terms of this particular barrage, we will bring it to you as and when it happens. Stay with us. We've got much more to discuss. I now want to welcome Michal Kotler-Wunsch. She's the CEO of the International Legal Forum and Israel's former special envoy for combating anti-Semitism, joining us from Central Israel right now. Michal, good to see you. Before we get to the issue at hand, I'd just like your take on exactly what unfolded right now. It's becoming increasingly familiar that people around the country need to get to a safe zone, need to get to a shelter, and they don't have a lot of time to do it. Perhaps paint a picture for us of what it looks like for you when you need to get to safety. Give us a sense of what it's like for you, and it never feels completely normal, does it? Tell us more.
Well, Benita, it should never become completely normal. And here we go again.
And here we go again. I have to interrupt you because
This is the early warning.
An early warning as we speak, almost indicating that, yes, in fact, there is another potential barrage coming through. We wait to see. This is the warning on our phones. We wait to see if this is going to impact Central Israel. Do continue, Michal.
Become normal. And this has to be very clear and heard around the world there are hundreds of ballistic missiles, rockets, UAVs that are being launched indiscriminately at Israeli civilians, intentionally at civilians, hitting, killing, murdering, and actually, in very many cases, as you've said, intercepted with this warning that we are now experiencing. But we need to be clear. They are being launched by the Islamic regime in Iran and its genocidal terror proxies, today Hezbollah being one of them. And you asked about that experience individually that we've had, all of us. A minute and a half today without this warning that we are now awaiting for the actual siren, because it comes from further away from Iran, clearly. When it came from Lebanon today, launched by Hezbollah, a genocidal terror proxy of the same Islamic regime in Iran, some of us had to run into shelter. Some driving had to stop on the side of the road and jump into the tunnel by the road. And we have to understand that this should never be normalized. That is what the state of Israel is engaged in at the moment, in a war of self-defense, in what has been raging since the October the 7th massacre by Hamas, another genocidal terror proxy of the criminal Islamic regime in Iran. And it should be very clear for all those questioning the validity of international law that self-defense is precisely what is happening right now as we speak.
Particularly in the face of the biggest sponsor of terror, the head of the snake, Iran, with all its proxies, with American and Israeli blood on its hands as well. The impact of its proxies very clear to all those in the country, literally, as we are speaking. And just to be clear, if we do get the alert that those missiles are heading towards Tel Aviv, we will go to the shelter. Until then, I'd like your take on the way the developments in Iran in recent days, the joint Israeli and US operations are being covered in the media, because the way it's being depicted in certain parts of the world, paying tribute to the supreme leader, a man who, quote unquote, made Iran a regional power. This was the New York Times. We are discussing right now that this is actually the head of the snake with so much blood on his hands. That's the supreme leader. Give us a sense of the way the story is being covered in different parts of the globe right now.
Again, so we're very clear, Benita. 47 years of a regime that impoverished the people of Iran, tortured them, slaughtered them in the past few weeks, thousands of them, over 30,000 reportedly slaughtered by that #1 state sponsor of terror around the world. We've mentioned some of its genocidal terror proxies that with obsession it built in a ring of fire with the openly declared intent of annihilating the small Satan that is the state of Israel, the Jew among nations, and the big Satan that is the United States of America. As you've said, actively since 1979, murdering civilians, military personnel of the US, of other countries, targeting civilians on other countries' soil, citizens of those countries, in gross violation of their sovereignty, not only as the #1 state sponsor, but in this continued pursuit of nuclear and ballistic capabilities that we are witnessing right now. And we would be remiss if we didn't mention that just this evening, we got news that Israel was able to actually, very hopefully, destroy where the final piece of their nuclear capabilities, this Islamic regime in Iran that intends to build an alternate reality on the rubble of our civilization, that it declares the intent to annihilate. And that covered that butcher of Tehran that has slaughtered more than 30,000 Iranians in the streets of London and Sydney and Toronto, described as the right side of history, is now, as you said, on the pages of New York Times and other legacy media, mainstream media, reported as if he's the friendly grandfather that has had some sort of historic impact, positive impact on the world, on global affairs. It's akin to saying that Hitler was dead at 56 with the global impact that it had on Germany, for Germany around the world. That is what we are experiencing. And I want to be very clear. That false moral equivalency is precisely what has emboldened this criminal Islamic regime in Iran and its genocidal terror proxies. If there is not moral clarity from Western democracies, from the international institutions, we've seen the Secretary General and alleged human rights leaders and organizations condemn what it is that is, as I said, not just a war of self-defense, but against what was going to be imminent attack on not only the countries it openly declares the intent to destroy, but in fact on our shared civilization. That reporting is a part of the eighth front of this war, an eighth front that is an unconventional war for hearts and minds, raging for decades, that has weaponized, among other things, international law.
And of course, worth repeating right now that the rockets that have been launched towards Israel are launched towards civilian areas. These are targeting Israelis across the country, in the north, in the south, and in the center. We wait to see how it all unfolds. Michal Kotler-Wunsch, stay safe. Thank you very much for joining us live from central Israel under very unusual circumstances. Thank you, Michal.
Thank you, Benita. And just to remember the resilience and the courage of the Israeli society as we face this existential war that is in protection of freedom and humanity around the world.
No doubt about it. Thank you so much, as always. Staying with us now in studio, security analyst Yaakov Lapin, senior Middle East correspondent Ariel Oserat, and our senior correspondent Owen Alterman. Owen, we just got back from the shelter, just a few moments into the continuation of this broadcast, and yet another alert on our phones suggesting another barrage, more missiles heading towards civilian parts of the country as we speak.
Life in Israel, Benita. And the sad thing is, or maybe the positive thing is, that the human mind is resilient. And we've gotten used to this over the course of 2+ years. And again, on one hand, we see what can happen when these missiles come through, and we see how people can be injured and even, God forbid, killed. On the other hand, we've all seen the videos, again, as we now close the Purim holiday and most of the country in Jerusalem starts to celebrate it, the celebrations inside the bomb shelters of throngs of young people there showing how we can still celebrate life and we can still celebrate our holidays. As one Twitter user put it, there hasn't been a Purim like this in 2,500 years. To be celebrating this holiday, even as we're fighting off potential extermination from the Islamic Republic coming from Iran. And here now we have the siren itself, so we're obviously held to the shelters.
We'll be back as soon as it is safe to do so.
Well, our crew heading back to the shelter there in Jaffa. Godspeed to everybody under these alerts right now, and sirens. Please, if you're hearing sirens, getting red alerts on your phone, please find the nearest shelter. Get there as quickly as possible. We'll keep you updated as best we can here from Washington. This is Mike Wagenheim at the White House. Red alerts going out on phones throughout Israel right now, just encompassing a massive portion of the country. It spans the Mediterranean coast from just north of Sderot, along north to Ashkelon, Ashdod, Rishon LeZion, Cholon, Herzliya, Netanya, and all the way up to Hadera, then stretches east past Jenin and down along the eastern portion of Israel and into Judea and Samaria, through Jericho, east past Jerusalem, Bethlehem, and Hebron, and then turning southwest into the Negev and back northwest, again, just south of Kiryat Gat and Ashkelon. So almost the entire country, except for the northern Galilee, it seems, under this red alert right now, as sirens now ringing out, at least in central Israel, and we'll try to get word if they're hearing sirens elsewhere around the country right now. The last barrage, we understand from a spokesperson from Magen David Adom, that at this stage, there are no known casualties. MTA paramedics and EMTs have been dispatched to the reported sites of impact, and additional teams are treating several individuals who were injured while heading to the shelters. But the missiles themselves, the rockets, have not caused any known casualties thus far. Now, Tel Aviv district officers are on the scene of several impact sites from the last round that came in earlier in the hour. There are munition fragments within the Tel Aviv district. Property damage has been reported. Again, at this stage, no injuries as a result of those rockets are known. If you are in those areas where there has been impact, stay away. Stay away. It can still be very dangerous with possible unexploded ordnances there. So don't go anywhere near those impact sites and refrain from touching any debris that may contain explosive materials. Just don't touch any debris anyway, whether it contains explosive materials or not. Any suspicious item, report it immediately to the police emergency center. We're getting word now of an updated red alert system here going on. It pretty much resembles the information we had earlier, just a massive portion of the country now under red alerts right now. Again, almost all of the Mediterranean coast from just north of Ashdod to Netanya and spanning out across the country to the east all the way through into Judea and Samaria, the West Bank. It encompasses Jerusalem. And again, just a massive portion of the country right now under those red alerts. Please, if you're getting an alert on your phone, if you're hearing siren, get to a shelter as quickly as possible. Looking at what's transpired so far in this war in terms of the rockets that have come in, look back here at today, it's already been 20 launches. Yesterday, it was 25 launches. Back on Sunday, 65 launches. And on Saturday, first day of the war, 90 launches coming in from Iran into Israeli territory. A suspected Iranian drone has hit what appears to be a CIA station in Saudi Arabia. This is according to the Washington Post. Try to get more information on that as we can. Again, this is Mike Wagenheim coming to you from the White House in Washington as our crew there in Tel Aviv is in the shelter with sirens blaring in central Israel for the second time this hour. President Trump and Secretary of State Marco Rubio playing a bit of cleanup today, trying to sweep up comments made by Secretary Rubio yesterday to the effect that Israel forced the United States essentially into the war. Rubio commenting on Capitol Hill yesterday that it was an imminent Israeli attack coming on Iran that forced America to essentially attack Iran, the thinking being that America and Israel are so inextricably linked, especially in the Iranians' eyes, that an Israeli attack would result in retaliation against the Americans from the Islamic Republic. Therefore, it was best to strike first, very biblical, and therefore Donald Trump decided to take action. Now, Trump was asked directly about that today by the press, and he said, no, it was anything, it's the reverse. It was America that forced Israel to get into the war, though it didn't exactly clarify the circumstances. And Rubio also expressed similar sentiments today in another gaggle with Capitol Hill reporters. Senior administration official speaking with reporters earlier on today told us, in the days leading into the war, that Trump really wanted to get something done diplomatically. He sat down with the Iranians a few times, and the Iranians not only weren't willing to concede, but were almost mocking in their tone, according to the senior administration official, telling negotiators that the United States could not do diplomatically what it couldn't do militarily, that Iran had enough enriched uranium for 11 bombs in just a short amount of time. This is not something they ever talked about publicly. It was a defiant, and I'm quoting here, defiant attitude expressed by the Iranians in these negotiations. Plans that were supposed to come together in a few days were never formally submitted by the Iranians, according to this senior administration official who spoke with reporters earlier on today. And in the end, there were just too many holes in what the Iranians were willing to actually present to really match up with the reality of what the Americans were willing to accept. In addition to that, there were discoveries made in a Tehran research center that was supposed to be used for medical research of alarmingly large amounts of enriched uranium, which simply didn't match up with what the research center like that would be used for. Something the Iranians couldn't explain away either. In the end, the decision was made to halt negotiations until
Went to the light rail stop.
Welcome back to this breaking news edition. I'm Benita Levine, live in Tel Aviv. And once again, we have just come back from the bomb shelter here in our studio complex. Israel is ramping up its attacks on terror targets on two fronts at the same time, conducting simultaneous strikes in Tehran and Beirut. And clearly, the response is very swift, as we have experienced just in the last few moments, twice leaving the studio to go to shelter with an alert on our phones indicating incoming barrages from Iran. Senior Middle East correspondent Ariel Oseran, security analyst Yaakov Lapin, and senior correspondent Owen Alterman are here with me in studio now. We've just come back for the second time from the shelter. Ariel Oseran, bring us up to speed on exactly what is happening right now. The threat, the missiles, what is the latest?
This latest barrage was one missile, one ballistic missile launched from Iran. It was intercepted, but it sent millions of Israelis to the shelters. And this is becoming more of a Houthi dynamic of sending one missile, two missiles at a time to disrupt daily life rather than actually threatening the security, the national security of Israel. Now, obviously, Israelis must not be complacent and must adhere to the IDF Home Front Command guidelines. Whenever there's a siren, they must take shelter. Same thing with the Houthi missiles, by the way, which we have not seen yet in this operation since Saturday. But what this does show is that when Israel says that it took out over approximately 300 ballistic missile launchers, this is the result, that it cannot launch large barrages that pose a major threat to large parts of the country, but rather they're trying to show that they have launch capability, meaning that if they want to launch a missile, they can. But if they want to really hurt Israel, they are no longer, or it would appear in terms of their barrages over the past 48 hours, that their capacity to threaten Israelis has diminished significantly. Now, again, this is not to take lightly the threat of a ballistic missile. Some of them have fragmenting warheads that spread to a large area. But ultimately, we are seeing for ourselves the results of the Israeli operation, joint Israeli-American, I should say, operation to constantly hunt down these ballistic missile launchers. Now, when the IDF says that it took out 300 launchers, that's the IDF alone. U.S. forces are also taking out these launchers. So we're seeing a significant degradation in the launch capabilities and capacity of Iran toward Israel, and all the while, Israel's efforts to further reduce their ability and their capabilities is ongoing.
The IDF itself said earlier on in the day it had dropped over 4,000 bombs on Iran since Saturday. That's the same number used in the entire 12-day war back in June. What other numbers stood out for you, Yaakov? So many intense strikes trying to preclude exactly what has happened now from happening.
Yeah, it's even more than the number that was dropped during the 12-day war. So in 4 days, the Israeli Air Force has exceeded, in terms of its strike efficiency and strike production rate, for lack of a better word, it has exceeded what it accomplished in 12 days just back in June. This shows but there was very intensive preparations for this operation. How do you get the same Air Force dealing with an enemy with the same distance to drop, so many more times munitions on more targets? It's phenomenal work by the Israeli Air Force. And also, the military intelligence and the Mossad, the target list, which we just keep discovering every day multiple times, including, this secret nuclear facility outside of Tehran. One of many targets struck 300 waves of attacks just in the past 24 hours, 1,600 sorties since Saturday. These numbers are phenomenal, and it all starts with that single historic flyover of 200 jets, the largest flyover in Israeli Air Force history since 1948. Never before have 200 jets taken off and delivered that kind of opening strike, paving the path for aerial superiority and paving the path to Tehran. So really, the Israeli Air Force here is simply making history. And I think what they have done here is going to be studied by Air Forces all over the world for years to come.
Stay with us. We'll discuss more in a few moments. Right now, I'd like to check in once again with our correspondent, Joe Brown. He joins us from Tel Aviv. And Joe, the last time we spoke, we were interrupted by an alert siren. Where exactly are you right now? What update can you share?
Yes, well, last time we spoke, I was actually reeling off the story of Purim, and evidently those in Iran had heard the Megillah so many times that they got bored of it and wanted to put an end to it. So I decided to travel down here to a light rail station. This is deep, deep underground, so it doubles up as a shelter, a big one too. There's a lot of people here around me who have been staying here for hours on end. A lot of people have got their sleeping bags. They've brought pets along with them. And this is what people in Israel have to do. A lot of people live in buildings that aren't up to date. They don't have shelters that were built inside them. So instead of going down when you get the first warning and it's 2 a.m. and you're tired, sleep deprived, and you don't know where your shoes are, you don't want to be having to stress about getting down some stairs, potentially even injuring yourself. So a lot of people stay here to make it easy for themselves. In the last couple of attacks on Israel, the ballistic missiles that have been fired towards the country, Magen Vidadom has said that one person is lightly injured with a shrapnel injury. No major sites were hit, no buildings. One missile was intercepted. We know that one landed in an open area. But for the rest of the night, thousands of people will be sleeping in public shelters just like this.
Once again, for many people, and again, as you say, a lot of people don't have shelters within their homes and they need to come and make a plan B, just like you did over there. Appreciate the update. You stay safe. Correspondent Joe Brown, live from Tel Aviv once again. Thank you very much for your coverage. And now, still in studio, we come to our senior correspondent, Owen Alterman, on an issue we were discussing earlier on in the broadcast, and that is who is in charge in Iran. The supreme leader is no longer, but apparently plans are afoot for his son to take over. What is the latest? What are you learning?
Or even more, Benita, Iran International, a leading Iranian opposition news outlet, obviously based outside the country, but with great sources inside and considered very, very credible, is reporting that the new supreme leader has already been picked. And it's none other than Mojtaba Khamenei, the son of, who at one point had thought to have been assassinated on day one of the war. But it turns out that he hasn't been, is thought to be injured. Here we're now seeing his picture on screen, thought to be as hardlined, if not more so, than his father. And Benita, also importantly, is seen and is tapped in the Iran International article itself as being close to the Iranian Revolutionary Guards. Benita, we're all trying to understand and read the tea leaves about where the actual power lies in the Islamic Republic in these tumultuous days for the regime after Ali Khamenei's assassination and killing. And the Revolutionary Guards has long been at least, one of the most important institutions in the country, worked closely with the former supreme leader, and according to Iran International, had an important say in seeing who would be picked as the successor. And also, Benita, a report from Iran International on the evening of the night of the first day of the war, reporting that the IRGC, that the Revolutionary Guards, wanted a supreme leader to be picked quickly, and understood even then that the Assembly of Experts, the constitutional body that's slated to be the one to pick the supreme leader, might actually be able to meet to do the task because of the obvious conditions of the war. And so the Revolutionary Guards, according to that report, were looking to find a legal way to circumvent the Assembly of Experts and find a different way to have the supreme leader picked. As it turns out, it seems that, according to the Iranian state media, the body, the Assembly of Experts, was able to vote remotely. At any rate, the IRGC getting its way, according to this report, having its man picked for the job, the new supreme leader, Mujtaba Khamenei, of course, according to reports, not officially confirmed.
Well, it's very good timing because on this exact story, we now welcome Andrew Khalili, Policy Director at the National Union for Democracy in Iran, joining us now from Washington. Thank you so much for your time. The Iranian regime's leadership is being rapidly decimated. To start, what do you make of the reports we were just discussing here in studio that the supreme leader will be replaced by his son, Mujtaba? That's according to Iran International. Your thoughts, your reaction?
I think your senior correspondent summed it up well. I would say, frankly, there was always going to be a succession crisis, even if Khamenei were to have died naturally. But his son was a leading candidate to take over at all times. What I think is really important to emphasize here is that whoever takes over to lead this regime or to be part of the leadership structure of the regime moving forward will not be someone that, A, the United States will be able to work with, or who will make a deal with the United States or cooperate or give President Trump what he wants. And B, they will have no legitimacy amongst the people. These are people who were still part of the massacre that we saw in January, where over 40,000 Iranians were killed. So I would emphasize those two things, as well as the fact that whoever comes next is likely going to be a very major target for the United States and Israel moving forward.
No doubt that anyone in a leadership position right now, it seems, is at some kind of risk, especially when we heard that when the clerics apparently were meeting, that particular site was targeted as they discussed who would be the next leader. We wait to see confirmation on that strike and exactly what did happen. What we do know is there are reports also in Iran that the supreme leader will be buried in the holy city of Mashhad. It's been a while, obviously, since a burial of this stature has happened. What does it likely look like? Who would be there? Give us a sense of the magnitude of a moment like that for the regime, of course.
Sure. I guess I don't have too much to add on that. I would just say, again, these are all major gatherings that I think would be targets for the United States and Israel. I think what's really important to look at is what we expect to see moving forward. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, President Trump have both said the operation is likely entering a new phase. So we expect to see continued targeting of political and military leadership, as well as missile bases, Basij, and the repressive forces of the regime.
It's no doubt that those kind of military strikes will continue. What, though, do you make of the reports that Donald Trump is open to getting arms to militia groups opposed to the regime? Your thoughts?
Look, I think there are two pretty disastrous outcomes of this operation. The goal should be what President Trump and what Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu have regularly outlined, which is to give the Iranian people the chance to decide their own future. The two disastrous outcomes would be, one, accepting a figure from within the regime as if there's some sort of so-called moderate that exists, and B, trying to weaken Iran through promoting separatism and the fracturing of the country. What the Prime Minister has consistently said is they expect to help the Iranian people bring about regime change themselves and to decide their own future. And I think that we expect them to continue moving towards that goal.
And certainly the whole region waiting to see what looks like a very new era for the Iranian people coming soon. Andrew Khalili, Policy Director at the National Union for Democracy in Iran, live from DC. Thank you very much for being with us on this breaking news edition. And talking about breaking news, we're hearing reports that the Iranian regime has been very busy now launching missiles at Qatar. Senior Middle East correspondent Ariel Osarayan, what update can you share?
Yeah, the Qatari Defense Ministry issuing a statement a short while ago that Iran launched 2 ballistic missiles at its territory. One was successfully intercepted, and the other hit near the U.S. Al Udeid base that is near Doha. Now, this would be one indication that the Iranians are continuing, keeping up the pace, trying to pressure the Gulf countries into them pressuring the United States to try and stop this war. But as far as the statements coming out of those countries, they say that they are reserving their right for self-defense, but we're not seeing them exercise that right. And the reason for that is because they do not want to see, or do not want the optics to be seen of them fighting alongside Israel, even if it is against Iran, a country that is continuously targeting them. The UAE said earlier this evening that it withstood over 1,000 Iranian attacks. That is more than any other country that has been attacked by Iran, any of the other 9 countries combined. The UAE suffering the brunt of this Iranian aggression. And we have to remember that the UAE is one of Iran's main trade partners, $30 billion just last year in trade between the two countries. And so this is a very significant escalation that the Iranians know how they entered it, but it's not clear how they will exit it. I just want to add one point with regards to Mujtaba Khamenei. If he indeed is elected and now positioned as the new supreme leader, he may be the leader of the Islamic Republic, but he is not going to be supreme. He does not hold the same clout that his father held, who is really seen as the individual who not only carried forward the baton of Khomeini, the father of the Islamic Republic, but who really put it into practice and established the Islamic Republic in its current position as it is. The main understanding, expectation of an Islamic Republic under Mujtaba Khamenei is that he may be in the position of the supreme leader, but there will be so many elements that will try to undercut him, to try and advance their own agendas. Some of these agendas could be even more aggressive towards Israel and the West. But as far as his own positioning as supreme leader, he is not a successor of his father, even if he does share the same title.
And it's interesting to take out what you're saying about Mujtaba Khamenei, Ariel. It's obviously a sign of ill health of the regime, apart from, in a sense, everything that's going on. This was a regime that had as its ideal a combination of fanatical Islam and modernity, right? Systems of a popular election, of committees that choose people. The idea being that people are supposed to be chosen on merit, including the supreme leader. Of course, the warped merit of the Islamic Republic, but merit nonetheless. And because of their inability to come together, the only way they can do it is pick the son of. It's a sign of a rot. I see it as a sign of rot within the regime. We've seen this in regimes historically that move from systems of merit towards systems of a patrilineal descent, of picking successors. And we see it here too. By the way, only in the Middle East would you fire 1,000 missiles and drones at one of your leading trade partners. Just imagine that, right? One of the leading trade partners, as Ariel said, now being attacked by the country that it trades with, and with Qatar. The Iranian regime hasn't needed excuses to be shooting missiles and drones at the Gulf states. But if, in fact, the reports from earlier today in Israeli media that Qatar had actually attacked Iran are true, and the Qataris, in a sense, neither confirmed it nor denied it, then this can be seen as a kind of Iranian response. And in keeping with the volleys toward Israel, a fairly feeble response of only 2 ballistic missiles rather than a huge barrage, as we've seen over the course of the beginning of the war.
Iranians also did target the U.S. embassy in Riyadh. The likely reaction out of Saudi Arabia. How much longer can these nations just take these hits?
Well, look, they have air defenses. A lot of them are American air defenses. Also, according to reports, the UAE has some Israeli systems. And look, the UAE is actually doing a pretty good job. We're only hearing about the ones that get through, but let's look at the figures. Most of the UAVs and the missiles that the Gulf countries have been subjected to have been intercepted. So this is actually their first run-in with a full-scale attack. And they're doing well. They're learning quickly. I'm sure that they're getting assistance from, let's call it, outside players in order to improve their air defenses. And at the end of the day, I think that they're going to be, coming out of this much stronger in terms of their ability to defend. Now, the challenge that they face is greater than the challenge we face because they are closer to Iran. Iran has a lot more short-range missiles that can target these countries than it has mid-range ballistic missiles of the type that it is firing at us here in Israel. Iran has more drones that can reach these countries than the number of drones that can reach us. So the challenge that these Gulf countries are facing is certainly greater than the challenge we are facing. I think that they're actually doing quite well considering the fact that this is their very first time and the scope of the challenge. And they're to be commended. Their air defense systems are performing. I think they're going to be learning a lot of lessons after this. And I think that we should, look at the bigger picture and not only look at the ones that have gotten through, because if a lot more, let's put it that way, a lot more missiles and drones could have actually gotten through than the ones that have.
We were talking earlier on about the targeting inside Dubai near the U.S. consulate. Now we're just hearing the U.S. State Department is raising the travel advisory level to level 3. So clearly major concerns.
And we're also hearing from the Washington Post that the CIA station in Saudi Arabia was targeted by a suicide drone, by an Iranian suicide drone. We don't know the results of that attack, but that's another attack. It looks like the Iranians really mapped out every American asset in the Gulf, and they're going after it.
At least that's a military target, not a hotel or an apartment building.
Not
realistically,
exactly.
What kind of capabilities does Iran have to keep on targeting Israel as it is and all these different nations? We've been covering this for 4 days now, regular attempts to disrupt. It's also threatening to cause havoc in the Strait of Hormuz. How does it have the capabilities to do this? And realistically, how much longer can this continue for until there is a proper reaction, not just from the US and Israel?
Yeah. So in terms of how long they can do this, look, they can pace themselves, and they are pacing themselves. I think that the volleys that we're seeing right now this evening are smaller than the volleys that we saw at the beginning of this war. And that's not only because they have few launchers. I think it's also because the Iranians are pacing themselves. And what they're really looking for when it comes to Israel right now is disruption. They want to terrorize, demoralize. I think that's their main goal. So they can keep doing this. But I think that we're going to keep seeing the volleys get smaller. They're going to keep struggling more and more as the Israeli Air Force closes in on their last, say, 100 or so launchers that are threatening us. And that's also going to benefit the Gulf states. Now, in terms of the second part of your question, I really think, it's high time for the Gulf countries to come off the fence and join this attack. They are being attacked. This is a declaration of war on their sovereignty by a terrorist, a jihadist, fundamentalist regime. Doesn't recognize their very sovereignty, and this is obvious by their attack. So they have some of these countries, especially the Saudis, have serious air power, offensive air power, and for them to just make do with defense is really, I think, just spurring the Iranians on. If they think they're going to de-escalate, all they're doing is giving the terrorist bully across the water more incentive to attack them. They should come off the fence and start reacting proactively and offensively because they are being attacked in the clearest way possible.
And talking of the Strait of Hormuz, we know that Donald Trump himself took to his own social network just in recent hours saying the U.S. Navy would start escorting tankers through that waterway, and of course, such a significant one for the region. Yeah,
let's remember that China, for example, is dependent on a very large percentage of its oil from this region. About 90% of Iranian oil is sold to China. I think that makes up around 15% of Iranian oil imports. But when you add in the Saudis and the Iraqi oil and the other Gulf countries, I think this is probably more than 40% of the oil that China imports. So I think China is actually pretty concerned about disruption to its oil supply.
And isn't it ironic that it's the United States Navy that's going to be protecting China's oil supply?
It's incredibly ironic because...
Of course, it makes sense because it's all one oil market.
It really is ironic because before this war, we kept getting reports about China sending planetary mixers to Iran. These are mixers that are used to create solid fuel for Iran's missile program. So if the Chinese have been helping Iran rebuild its missile program, they have a direct hand in sparking this conflict, because one of the main triggers of this conflict is the Iranian missile program and Israel's determination to stop it. So basically, we're seeing China harm its own energy interests here Perhaps they thought that they could keep this under control. Nothing of the sort has happened. This is, what happens when you help the Iranian missile program keep growing. It leads to an explosion.
Literally, it leads to an explosion. Let's pivot now to something slightly more positive. Of course, we know there are tens of thousands of people who are stranded outside of Israel wanting to get back home. No one knows, of course, when that is likely to be happening. But the Transportation Minister, Miri Regev, did approve the opening of airspace from as early as Wednesday night in what she called a phased manner. Obviously, this would be dependent on developments with this war, but that would be a major boon in terms of getting people back home and for those that need to get out and get out quickly.
Listen, I was stuck in Paris during the war, the first Iran war back in June. It sounds like a paradise. But it's anything but. You're separated from your family. In my case, largely separated, at least from the center of gravity of our work here as journalists. It's a very, very hard situation. It's hard for people financially in many cases. Hard for people, again, in terms of their family life, in terms of their professional life. So it's really important for the government to do all it can to bring people home as quickly as possible. The sense I get is that the process has moved a lot faster this time than it did in June, that there are more and more creative ways being found to bring people back, that the process with the airlines may be a little bit less chaotic, at least than it was back in June, because the process in many cases was absolutely horrific. So it's good that there were lessons learned, again, but there's still a long way to go. It has to be done safely. It has to be done in an organized way. And it's good to see the government moving forward. And also, I think, of course, is a testament, as we've been saying over the course of the last number of hours, a testament to the achievements of the United States and Israeli air forces that have been able to bring down by 70%, according to what's been reported across Israeli media in the last few hours, a reduction of 70% in terms of the rate of fire in Israel. That certainly helps the process of opening the skies.
And a short while ago, we heard reports that Jordan had reopened its airspace. Senior Middle East correspondent Ariel Osseran, that would be significant, of course, for the entire region if all these airports are allowed to operate again freely, hopefully soon.
Yeah, well, that is not going to be the case in places like Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Doha, or even Kuwait. Targets areas that are much closer to Iran, and damage has been caused to those airports as a result of Iranian drone attacks. And so this is still an evolving situation. Also, the decision in Israel could be shifted if we see a resurgence in the pace of Iranian launches. That is not the likely scenario, and that is why this is a calculated assessment moving forward. But this would show, when President Trump says that he expects this campaign to go on for 4 to 5 weeks, and we are still in day 4, talking about reopening the airports within the first week, that indicates a significant optimistic kind of assessment moving forward with regards to how this operation is going to unfold and how the U.S. and Israel are expected to continue to degrade Iran's launch capabilities.
And when that happens, we will keep bringing you updates as they happen. Senior Middle East correspondent Ariel Osseran, security analyst Yaakov Lapin, and our senior correspondent Owen Alterman. So appreciate you being here for the slightly disrupted and very lengthy coverage, but it certainly made all the difference. Appreciate your updates and your insights.
And thank you, Benita, for reporting, for anchoring since 4 p.m. this evening straight. Kudos.
No shortage of developments for us to be discussing. Thank you all. And that is a wrap for this breaking news edition. You can, of course, follow us for more on all these stories on social media and check out our live English broadcast lineup for this week to bring you updated war coverage. We start our broadcast 4 p.m. Israel time, continue at 6 p.m., then 8 p.m., which is 1 p.m. Eastern, and we'll have another 2-hour special at 10 p.m. Israel time, which is 3 p.m. Eastern. So join us. I'm Benita Levine in Tel Aviv. Thank you for watching.